That night, I thought I was just going for a simple drive. I never imagined it would become the craziest, most unforgettable drive of my entire life. What that officer did, it shocked me. But I didn't want him to stop. Not at all. It all started because I needed to escape. I had no real reason to be out driving that night. Sometimes, the silence in my apartment just gets too loud. The city has a strange beauty after dark. The pavement glistens under the streetlights, neon signs flicker like dying stars, and distant sirens hum a lonely lullaby. It was one of those nights where you feel like the last person on earth. And maybe, that's exactly what I wanted. I kept my windows down, letting the cool air rush through my hair, trying to wash away the tension from the day. Work had been a nightmare. My boss dumped a mountain of last-minute tasks on me, my inbox was a disaster, and I hadn't even eaten lunch. By the time I got home, I was completely drained. Lying in bed was pointless. I'd just stare at the ceiling, drowning in my own thoughts. The weight of the entire week was crushing my chest. I had to get out. I had to clear my head. So I grabbed my keys and left. No destination. I never have one on these late-night drives. They're not about going somewhere, they're about escaping. For one single hour, I could pretend that nothing was weighing me down. The radio played something soft and slow, music that made the night feel even more lonely. I turned onto a quieter road, one lined with trees and barely lit by the occasional street lamp. It's a road you only take if you know it well. And I did. I'd driven it dozens of times, always when I needed to be alone with my thoughts. But that night, I wasn't alone. The sudden flash of red and blue in my rearview mirror yanked me back to reality. My stomach dropped. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. A cop. My mind raced. Was I speeding? Did I run a light? Was a tail light out? I didn't know it yet, but the real reason to be tense was still to come. I pulled over, my heart hammering against my ribs. I fumbled with the radio, turning it down, and watched the patrol car roll to a stop behind me. The door opened, and a figure stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with a quiet confidence. His uniform was crisp, his badge glinting under the dull streetlight. Even in the dimness, I could see the sharp line of his jaw, the way his dark, unreadable eyes settled on me, like he was already figuring me out. I rolled down my window as he approached, trying to keep my expression neutral. Evening. License and registration. His voice was low, firm. All authority, no friendliness. I nodded, quickly reaching for my wallet. My hands were slightly unsteady. I handed over my documents, watching as he glanced at them before his gaze locked back onto me. There was a heavy moment of silence. Then he spoke again. Step out of the vehicle. A chill shot down my spine. Is there a problem, officer? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Step out of the car. His tone left no room for argument. I hesitated for just a second before pushing the door open and stepping onto the pavement. The night air felt cool against my skin, but it did nothing to calm the unease coiling in my stomach. The officer took a step closer, his presence completely commanding. Turn around. Hands on the car. I swallowed hard but did as I was told, pressing my palms flat against the cool metal. My heartbeat was a deaf drum in my ears. I felt him step behind me. Just a routine search, he said, his voice quieter now. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. His hand started at my shoulders, firm, but not rough. They moved down my arms, slow and methodical. I became hyper-aware of every point of contact, every shift in pressure. His touch trailed lower, pressing against my back, my sides, then further down. I held my breath. His hands slid past my waist, down my thighs. The touch lingered for a heartbeat too long. My body went stiff. Then, his fingers brushed somewhere they absolutely shouldn't have. A sharp inhale caught in my throat. My entire body tensed under the unexpected, deliberate contact. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't harsh. But it was intentional. He didn't pull away immediately. And in that charged, silent moment, neither did I. The air between us was thick with something electric and forbidden. My pulse was hammering, my skin burning where his hands had been. Then, just as suddenly, he stepped back. "You're clear," he said, his voice lower now, almost unreadable. But there was something hiding just beneath the surface. I turned around slowly, my eyes meeting his. And that's when I saw it. A flicker of something dangerous. Something undeniable. I thought it was over. But the night wasn't over yet. Not even close. The world outside had gone eerily silent. The kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of every tiny sound. My own breathing. The faint hum of the streetlight above. The distant rustling of trees in the breeze. The road stretched out endlessly in both directions, empty and abandoned. It felt like we had stepped into some alternate reality, a world where only the two of us existed. And I wasn't sure if that thought unsettled me, or thrilled me. The officer still stood a few feet away, watching me with an expression I couldn't decipher. His hands rested on his belt, his posture still rigidly authoritative. Yet, something about his stance had shifted. A hesitation. A reluctance. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I wanted to. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of my car door, forcing my fingers to stop trembling. But I could still feel the imprint of his touch on my skin, like an echo, a ghost of something neither of us was ready to acknowledge. The tension between us was thick, almost suffocating. Finally, I spoke, my voice cracking the stillness like glass. "That wasn't really a routine search, was it?" His jaw clenched. For the first time since this began, his eyes faltered. Just a flicker of something unnameable. It was gone in an instant, replaced by that unreadable mask. But I had seen it. I knew I had. "I was doing my job," he said, his voice firm, controlled. I tilted my head, searching his face, trying to understand what had just happened between us. "Your job?" I repeated, a little incredulous. "Your job includes putting your hands where they don't belong?" A beat of heavy silence. He exhaled through his nose, shifting slightly as if suddenly uncomfortable in his own skin. "You're free to go," he said, ignoring my question entirely. His tone had changed. Softer now. Almost like a warning. But something inside me refused to let it drop. "Why did you stop me, then?" I pushed. His gaze darkened. "You shouldn't be out here alone this late." It wasn't an answer. Not really. But it was something. I took a step closer, testing the boundaries of this strange, electric moment. "I think you already knew I wasn't a threat." His breathing slowed just slightly. "I think you stopped me for a different reason," I continued, my voice lower now. "But you don't want to admit that, do you?" A muscle in his jaw twitched. He looked away for a second, as if to collect himself. But then his eyes snapped back to mine, hard and guarded. "You should go home." The finality in his tone sent a chill through me. But I wasn't sure if it was from the warning in his voice, or because, deep down, I didn't want to leave. I should have gotten in my car, driven away, and buried this strange encounter. But my feet were glued to the pavement, my mind replaying every second, the way his hands had lingered, the way his fingers had pressed into my thigh, his touch searing through the fabric of my jeans. I should have hated it. But I didn't. Instead, it left a heavy, thrilling tension coiled in my whole body, an unspoken question burning between us. "You don't have to pretend," I said softly. His eyes flashed. With something, anger, maybe, or something even more dangerous. "Get in your car." He turned sharply, walking back to his patrol car, his movements stiff, like he was fighting against himself. I watched him go, my heart hammering. The way he walked, the way his fingers tightened into fists at his sides, it was like he was trying to escape. But escape from what? Me? Or himself? I exhaled shakily and finally slid into the driver's seat, my hands gripping the wheel. I started the engine but didn't pull away. Instead, I watched him through the rearview mirror. He stood beside his car, his back to me, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. For a moment, I thought, I hoped, he might turn around. But he didn't. I swallowed hard and finally pressed the gas. My tires crunched on the gravel as I pulled back onto the road, but my mind was stuck in that moment, looping over it again and again. His hands. His hesitation. The way he had touched me, not like a cop doing his job, but like a man crossing a line he wasn't supposed to. I didn't think it would lead to an event that would turn my entire life upside down. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. The adrenaline still thrummed through my veins, my skin tingling. I had thought the tension would dissipate the moment I left, but it clung to me like a second skin. Every time I blinked, I saw his face, those dark eyes, the way his fingers had hesitated, how his eyes had softened, betraying something he was desperately trying to hide. I should forget about it. I should let it go. But I knew I wouldn't. When I finally reached my apartment, I threw my keys on the counter and sank onto the couch, running a hand through my hair. The room felt too quiet, too empty, as if the world had stopped, leaving me alone with the weight of what had happened. I exhaled sharply, leaning back, trying to shake the tension coiled in my chest. Why did he stop me? That question gnawed at me. It didn't feel random. It felt personal. I grabbed my phone, scrolling aimlessly, but my thoughts kept drifting back to him. His eyes. His touch. That flicker of something in his gaze before he ordered me to leave. And then, before I even realized what I was doing, my fingers moved on their own, searching. It wasn't hard to find him. Officer Jace Carter. A few social media accounts, nothing too personal. But his face was unmistakable. Strong jawline. Piercing eyes. The same unreadable expression, even in photos. He looked like someone who kept his guard up, someone who didn't let people in. I chewed the inside of my cheek, hesitating. This was a bad idea. But then a new thought hit me. What if I saw him again? Something told me this wasn't the last time. I wasn't sure whether that thought excited me or terrified me. I tried to put it behind me. But there was so much more to come. Days passed. I threw myself into work, into my routine, pretending that night was just a strange, fleeting moment. But no matter how hard I tried to bury it, it kept resurfacing. And then, just when I thought I might finally shake it off, I saw him again. It was 2 weeks later, a Friday night. I'd gone out with friends for a few drinks, trying to clear my head. But after an hour, I found myself slipping away from the group, needing air, needing space. And that's when I spotted him. Leaning against his patrol car, parked at the edge of the lot near a dimly lit bar. He wasn't watching me, not directly, but I knew he saw me. I could feel it, in the way his fingers flexed at his sides, the way his head tilted slightly, as if he was debating something. But he had thoughts that I would never, ever imagine. My breath caught. This wasn't a coincidence. I could have walked away. I should have walked away. Instead, I found myself moving toward him, slowly, carefully, testing the space between us. Did you follow me here? I asked, my voice just above a whisper. His jaw clenched, his eyes flicking to mine. You shouldn't be out here alone. He used the same words from that night. I let out a short, breathless laugh. That's not an answer. A muscle in his jaw twitched. For a moment, neither of us moved. The night stretched between us, thick with unspoken words. Then, before I could stop myself, I took another step closer. Why did you stop me that night? I asked, quieter now. He exhaled slowly, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. I don't know, he admitted. The honesty in his voice was raw. I didn't expect that. But before I could respond, he did something that sent my heart into overdrive. He reached out, just slightly, as if on instinct, then quickly pulled back, like he'd made a mistake. But I felt it. That moment of hesitation. That pull. "You should go back inside," he murmured, his voice rough, like he was fighting against something inside himself. I should have listened. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I didn't go back inside. I should have. It would have been easier. Safer. Then that thing wouldn't happen to me. But something about the way Jace looked at me, his brows drawn tight, his jaw locked like he was fighting a war inside himself, kept me rooted in place. There was a storm in his eyes, something dark and unreadable, and it made my breath hitch in my throat. I stepped closer, my chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. The night air pressed in around us, thick and electric. "Why do you care?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, daring him to cross the line we both knew was there. My voice was quieter now, but it wasn't weak. It was a challenge. Jace stiffened. His eyes flickered down for a split second, lingering on my lips before he tore them away. His breath hitched, and I saw his fingers twitch at his sides, curling into fists like he was physically holding himself back. He inhaled sharply through his nose, nostrils flaring. "I don't." "Liar." I tilted my head, studying him, waiting for him to break. "You're a terrible liar, officer." His jaw ticked. His shoulders squared. He looked like a man on the edge of something dangerously beautiful. "Don't push me," he said. It was a raw, ragged warning. But I wanted to. I needed to. Because there was something between us, pulling, stretching, tightening. Something neither of us wanted to name. And if he wasn't going to say it, I was going to make him feel it. I stepped even closer, so close I could feel the heat radiating from him. My chest nearly brushed his. My voice dropped to a whisper. "What are you so afraid of, Jace?" A sharp sigh escaped his lips. His fingers twitched again. And then he did something I never expected. He snapped. His hands shot out, grabbing me by the waist. Before I could even process it, I was being shoved back hard until my back hit the cool metal of his patrol car. I gasped, but the sound was swallowed when his lips crashed against mine. It was rough. Desperate. A complete collision of heat and restraint breaking apart. I barely had time to react before his hands were on me, gripping my hips, pulling me flush against his body. His touch seared through the thin fabric of my shirt. I gasped against his lips, and that was all the invitation he needed. His tongue slipped past my parted lips, deepening the kiss until my head spun. He tasted like coffee and something dark. Something forbidden. I fisted his shirt, pulling him closer, needing more. Needing everything. He groaned into the kiss, a sound so low and raw it sent goosebumps prickling along my skin. His hands slid up, his fingers pressing into my ribs, my back, tracing fire along my skin. Then his hands dipped lower, gripping my thighs. In one swift motion, he lifted me, pressing me harder against the car. I wrapped my legs around his waist, my body completely caged against his. And this was what I had wanted. This desperation. This need. The way he held me like he wanted to devour me, like he had been starving for this but had denied himself for far too long. He kissed me like I was his last breath. Like he would die if he stopped. I moaned into his mouth, my fingers digging into the back of his neck, feeling the sharp contrast between the crisp uniform and the burning heat of his skin beneath it. He tore his lips from mine only to trail hot, open-mouthed kisses down my jaw to my neck. He bit down just enough to make me gasp, then soothed the spot with his tongue. His breathing was ragged, uneven. I hate you, he growled against my skin, his voice rough and strained. I let out a breathless laugh. No, you don't. His grip on me tightened. His forehead dropped to my shoulder, his chest rising and falling rapidly. For a moment, we just breathed. But then an unexpected thing happened again. A voice. "Officer Carter?" We froze. The world snapped back into focus. We turned, both breathless, both wide-eyed, to see another officer standing at the edge of the parking lot. His radio crackled at his side, the static slicing through the silence like a blade. For a second, no one spoke. Then Jace moved. Fast. 1 second he was pressed against me, his hands gripping my thighs, his lips still damp from our kiss. The next, he had dropped me to the ground, stumbling back as if I had burned him. The heat between us vanished in an instant, replaced by something cold. His face, just moments ago wrecked with need, was now unreadable. His lips parted like he wanted to say something, but then his jaw locked. He took another step back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Because in that instant, I knew this was going to be a problem. The cold night air rushed back between us, an unwelcome force shoving reality down my throat. My body still burned where Jace had touched me, where his lips had claimed me. But now it was like none of it had happened. He had pushed me away. No, he had dropped me. And the way he looked at me now, his face a blank mask, his jaw locked so tight I thought he might break a tooth. I hated it. I clenched my fists, my breath still uneven as I turned to look at the other officer. He was older, maybe in his mid-40s, with a skeptical look in his eyes. His gaze flickered between me and Jace, taking in the way we stood just a little too far apart, how I was still pressed against the hood of the car like I was trying to hold myself up. He knew. Or at least, he suspected. Jace was the first to move. He took another step back, straightening his uniform, adjusting his belt like it was some kind of shield. "Everything okay here, Carter?" the older officer asked, his tone casual. Too casual. Jace cleared his throat. "Yeah." He didn't look at me. Didn't see me at all. Just like that, he was slipping back into his role. Into the badge. Into the lie. And it pissed me off. "Are you sure?" the other officer pressed. Looked like something was going on. Jace's shoulders tensed. I could see the war inside him, the careful way he controlled his breathing. He was good at it. He'd probably been doing it for years. I, on the other hand, had no such control. "I was just leaving," I said before Jace could speak. My voice was flat. Detached. If he wanted to pretend, I could play along. Jace's head snapped toward me, his eyes flickering with something, anger, frustration, guilt. I didn't care. I pushed off the car, brushing past him without another glance. My heart was still hammering against my ribs, my skin still buzzing from his touch, but my face was unreadable. Jace had given me nothing, so I gave him the same in return. I walked straight to my car, yanked the door open, and slid inside. My hands were shaking slightly as I gripped the wheel. Through the windshield, I saw Jace still standing there, his posture rigid, his fists clenched at his sides. The other officer was speaking to him, but I couldn't hear the words. I didn't want to. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. And then, before I could stop myself, before I could think better of it, I looked at Jace. And he looked back. Just for a second. But it was enough. Because in that second, I saw everything he wasn't saying. I saw the battle in his eyes, the storm raging inside him. The fear. The want. The regret. But none of it mattered. Because he had already made his choice. So I made mine. I threw the car into drive. I barely remembered the drive home. My mind was a whirlwind, my body still aching from what had almost happened, from what had been ripped away the moment that officer had shown up. I should have expected it. Guys like Jace, guys who wore a badge, who carried duty and rules on their shoulders, they didn't get to have this. They didn't get to have me. And maybe that was for the best. Maybe it was better this way. Clean. Cut off before it even really began. So why did it feel like my chest was caving in? I stepped inside my apartment, locking the door behind me. The room was dark. Silent. Empty. Just like I was. I ran a hand through my hair, letting out a sharp breath before collapsing onto the couch. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. I didn't want to see if it was him. I didn't want to care. But the universe had other plans. Because not even 5 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. A hard, urgent knock. I froze. For a second, I thought I was imagining it, that my mind was playing tricks on me, conjuring up some desperate fantasy. But then it happened again. Knock. 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 Louder this time. And the one who was knocking, it was Jace. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, his hair a mess like he'd run his fingers through it too many times. His chest was rising and falling rapidly, like he had run all the way here. His eyes were dark, intense, desperate. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, he stepped inside. He grabbed my face with both hands. And then he did something I never thought an officer would do again. He kissed me. He didn't say anything. His eyes, darkened with a mixture of disbelief and something else, held mine. Neither of us moved for what seemed like an eternity, lost in our own world. It was silent, as though the world was holding its breath, waiting for one of us to make a decision. And yet, I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I had crossed a line I didn't know I was even willing to cross. But as the seconds stretched on, my heart pounding in my chest, I realized that it wasn't just me. He was caught in it, too. The tension between us was thick, suffocating. It was more than the simple weight of the situation, it was the gravity of the desire that hung between us, impossible to ignore. I could see his chest rising and falling, his hands still gripping the side of the car, his knuckles white with the effort to control himself. His lips parted, but no words came out. He seemed like he was about to speak, but then something changed in his eyes. Like he made a decision. In the split second before his lips crashed into mine again, it wasn't a gentle kiss. No soft brushing of lips. It was desperate. A collision of mouths, hot and consuming. I had barely a moment to react before his hands gripped my shoulders, pulling me against him with a force that made my breath catch in my throat. I didn't think. I couldn't think. All I could do was respond. My own hands instinctively reached for the buttons of his uniform. It felt like everything was happening too fast, and yet I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to stop it. His hands slid down my back, pulling me closer, tighter, until I could feel the heat of his body seeping into mine. The kiss deepened, his tongue slipping inside my mouth, searching, claiming, as though he'd been starving for this moment just like I had. I pulled away just for a breath, my heart racing. The space between us felt unbearable, so I closed it in one swift motion, my hands. Now tugging at the fabric of his shirt, desperate to feel more of him, to see more of him. His eyes flickered down to my hands, and without a word, he let me. Without a word, he helped me. His own hands moved quickly, shedding the last barriers between us. His shirt came off, tossed aside, and before I even realized it, I was running my fingers over the smooth, hard planes of his chest. The feel of his skin under my hands was electric. His hands were no longer idle. They moved to the hem of my shirt, and with a single, swift motion, it was gone too. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but more alive than I had in years. The cold air made me shiver, but the warmth of his hands on my body, the sheer heat between us, melted it all away. His lips found my neck again, hot and insistent, his breath sending shivers down my spine. The sensation was overwhelming, sending waves of pure desire coursing through me. Before I could even process it, I was pulling him closer, my hands tracing the lines of his back, feeling the powerful tension in his muscles as he reacted to my touch. A small, rational part of my mind was screaming to stop, to say something, to pull away. But nothing about this moment felt wrong. It felt right in a way I couldn't explain. There were no second thoughts. No regret. His lips left a trail of fire down my throat, and I couldn't help but gasp, my fingers gripping his shoulders as if the intensity of the moment might sweep me away. But then, with a sudden shift, his lips found mine again. This time, slower. More deliberate. Almost as if he was savoring me. I leaned into it, kissing him back with everything I had. My hands found their way into his hair, pulling him closer, deeper into me. Every inch of him, every second of this, felt overwhelming. Like we were both finally coming home to something we'd been too scared to admit. Just as I thought it couldn't get any more intense, his hand moved lower, no longer just exploring, but demanding. His fingers slid under the waistband of my jeans, a bold move that made my breath catch. My body responded before my mind could catch up. His touch was sure, confident, sending waves of heat through me. I wanted him. I didn't need to think about it. I could feel it in every part of me, the ache, the want, the need that had been building between us ever since that first touch on the side of the road. And then he was kissing me again, harder, deeper. There was no hesitation now. His hands were everywhere, moving over my body, his lips leaving a map of possession on my skin. "Don't stop," I whispered, not sure if the words even made sense. My mind was spinning, my heart racing. All I wanted was him. All of him. His response was a low, guttural sound of agreement. And then his mouth was back on mine, his body pressed against me so tightly I could feel the frantic beat of his heart matching my own. His hands moved with a raw urgency, pulling at the last of our clothes until there was nothing left between us but skin and heat and desperate, gasping breaths. I can't get into more details, but we did everything you could imagine. I gasped as we finally became one, the world spinning away until there was only him and me and the impossible, consuming heat between us. And then, just when it seemed like the world outside had faded away for good, we gave in completely. In my room, it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a regret. It was everything. We surrendered to the raw, hungry need that had been building between us, pushing aside every last bit of doubt. I didn't know when I closed my eyes, but I slept more soundly than I had in years. I woke to the soft sound of breathing beside me. Morning light crept through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room. My body felt deliciously sore, a permanent reminder of the night before, and my heart held a strange, tangled mix of guilt and something else I couldn't quite name, a thrilling, terrifying peace. Jace's arm was draped over me, his breath warm on my neck. I gently pulled myself away, trying not to wake him. As I shifted, I couldn't help but glance back. He was still asleep, his features soft and peaceful. It was a stark, beautiful contrast to the intense, raw man from just a few hours before. The memories flooded back, and my heart clenched. The feeling of his kiss was still fresh on my lips. The way his body had moved with mine was branded into my soul. I should have felt ashamed. I should have been repulsed by our recklessness. But instead, I felt an unsettling, powerful desire still lingering inside me. It hadn't faded with the night. I quietly stood and moved towards the window, the weight of what we'd done pressing on my chest. Could we really pretend nothing had changed? Could we ever go back to what we were before? A rustling sound behind me made me turn. Jace's eyes fluttered open. He blinked, clearly still groggy, and his gaze found mine. His expression shifted through confusion, then dawning awareness, and finally, a deep, unreadable emotion. "Morning," he mumbled, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning," I replied, my own throat tight. There was a long, heavy silence. The tension in the room was a living thing. His eyes were locked on mine, and I couldn't bring myself to speak. What was left to say? "So," he started, his tone carefully neutral, but I could hear the uncertainty vibrating beneath it. "I guess that makes us." "Don't," I whispered, cutting him off before he could finish. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself. I couldn't bear to hear him put a label on this. It would make it too real, too fragile. He smiled slightly, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "What? You don't want to admit we crossed a line?" he teased, but there was a trace of something dark, something vulnerable, in his voice. I forced a hollow laugh. "Shut up, Jace," I muttered, throwing a pillow at him. It was a feeble attempt to break the intensity, to mask the war of confusion swirling inside me. He caught the pillow, a more genuine, mischievous smile creeping back. "You never struck me as the type to run from the truth," he said casually. But his words stung. They were a reminder that everything had irrevocably shifted. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't articulate the storm inside me, how the desire and the guilt were locked in a battle I didn't know how to win. "Promise me something," he said suddenly, his voice softer now, yet his gaze was intensely serious. "What?" I asked, the weight of the situation sinking in deeper. "Promise me you won't just leave me alone in this." I looked at him, truly looked at him. The strong officer was gone, replaced by a man just as lost as I was. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He held my gaze, his eyes full of a determination I hadn't seen before. "We'll figure it out. Together." And as he spoke those words, I knew we were standing on the edge of a cliff. Whatever had happened between us couldn't be undone. What now? Where do we go from here? If we continue down this path, how do we face a world that would never understand? I don't have the answers. But one thing is painfully, beautifully clear: we can't take back what happened. No matter how much we might wish we could. So I have to ask you, what would you do in our place? Would you walk away, protecting yourself from the inevitable fallout? Or would you choose to continue, hand in hand, down this dangerous, uncertain, but electrifying road? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Because right now, I'm too lost in this feeling to even figure it out myself.